The other day, Adam, we covered all sorts of crazy kids at Columbia University, some of whom were saying some pretty sus things. Protests seem to be growing out of control. And in my opinion, my humble opinion, Columbia admin needs to do something about it. It needs to actually not let its students, maybe advocate for violence, maybe prevent graduations from occurring, very, very small things, I think. And I was curious as to what, Brianna Greyjoy's take on all of this stuff was. Okay, so how about we watch a little bit of that?
Sure, I'm anxious to see. I'm sure she has a reasonable, rational take here, a very sane perspective. So
Mhm.
let's dig in.
You about this, but obviously I support free speech, and the student protesters have every right to express their views, to engage in activism on the campus, and that's fine. And I don't think the police should be summoned to arrest them or break them up for that reason. I feel differently about the semi-permanent tent encampment things they, excuse me, that they've set up. Those I think have to eventually be cleared away so that people can go to class and have the normal functioning of the university take place. That should be the priority. But I have no problem with people, even people I totally disagree with, making their voices heard. And I do think a lot of the most contemptible statements, we support Hamas, we love rockets being fired, all of that seems to be coming from professional activists rather than the students, people outside the university.
So let me respond to Robbie first here. Because I disagree completely with the first part of what Robbie was saying. Like, I don't think students get a free pass to just protest and say whatever they want on campus. And I don't know why we would want that. I wouldn't want a roving band of students on school walking around saying, we need to kick all minorities out of school, right? I don't think in America we would tolerate people marching through college campuses that were college students saying, kick all blacks out of college.
There are a lot of people who think society is much more durable, though, and that they could take that. If there was open hostility between groups, that would be worth it in the name of freedom of speech. So I understand both perspectives. I lean more towards your perspective that it's just, it's not illegal, but we are kind of policing it culturally, and that's kind of the way to continue.
Well, it could be illegal because on terms of Columbia is a private university.
Well, it's not illegal.
They could tell you, like, we're not going to allow this behavior on college campuses.
Right, but they're a private institution. They're making the rules on their private institution. So, but it's not illegal. They've made.
Well, it's illegal if they continue to exist in the space by violating the rules, right?
Right. Yes.
Well, then we can kick you out.
Yes. So. Yeah. I think the legality of it is they make the rules of the private institution, and the police will enforce whatever rules they make.
Right. The speech itself isn't illegal. It's just that, their violation of the rules by a private institution is the
but this is why a lot of these things are they're doing off of campus, so they can say the really kind of incendiary stuff, the super incendiary stuff, because it isn't illegal, right?
Right.
Yeah.
But anyway, so I do disagree with that. I do agree, obviously, with Robbie that, you can't allow these encampments to exist. You can't allow, like, homeless tent cities to exist on campus. Nobody wants to see that. Though I disagree with him that I haven't seen evidence. I don't know what he's referring to. I haven't seen evidence that the people shouting the most incendiary things are part of some class of professional protesters. I haven't seen that. I don't know what that's in reference to. But he did give, he did kind of give a lot for Brianna to maybe agree with here. But let's see. Do you think she's going to agree with Robbie, or do you think she's going to?
Of course, she loves Robbie. You can tell by the way she's leering at him.
Priority, but I have no problem with people, even people I totally disagree with, making their voices heard. And I do think a lot of the most contemptible statements, we support Hamas, we love rockets being fired, all of that seems to be coming from professional activists rather than the students, people outside the university.
Professional activists or false flags, they're unidentified strangers.
False flags.
They're unidentified strangers.
You think it's Trump supporters?
No. Why is it false flag a Trump supporter? It's someone who is wanting to make the protest look bad, whatever their political background. Why do you go into Trump supporters?
Okay, so you think it would...
Wait. Why do you think
Israeli?
they're activists? I'm saying that we don't know who these people are. You were very comfortable labeling.
Sitch, it's the IDF. The IDF is planting people in the crowd.
I know. This is so absurd. This is such a goofy fucking take. Like the idea that, we're seeing protesters who are saying that they're pro-Hamas, that they want to attack Israel. And she's like, well, how do we know they're not false flags? Like, oh my God, are you fucking shit? Are you joking me? This is a joke. This is such cope. There's no evidence of this whatsoever.
So is she saying that the support for the Palestinian cause is all AstroTurf? Is that?
Well, no, she's going to say that
she's
going to say that the people advocating for violence and the pro-Hamas people are AstroTurf, but like the people that are pro-Palestinian but are not pro-violence are the real people.
Interesting. Okay.
Right. Which of course is absurd because we've literally heard from, Second Thought, Hassan, some of these other people, a pretty clear advocation for violence against Israel. We've heard from some of the protesters.
Finkelstein, who's been on our podcast like 3 times.
Finkelstein himself, who was like talking about how awesome October 7th was until, it wasn't socially acceptable for him to stand by that position. He's like, oh, I didn't know. It took me like a couple days to know, even though everyone knew like the day it happened, how horrific it was.
Finkelstein would not condemn Hamas. He basically said, I will not condemn the people who lash out at their jailers.
Yes. Yeah. And we even talked about, the other day that there were professors at Columbia that were also giving praise directly to Hamas. And giving praise directly to October 7th. So it's completely absurd for Brown to act like it's so outside the norm that there would be student protesters praising Hamas that it has to be some kind of false flag.
Yeah. False flag professor.
Right.
Them as activists, pro-Palestinian activists, when we have no idea who these people are. That's the point I'm trying to make. And in fact, nobody has connected a single Columbia student.
Did you see Robbie's look there? Oh my God, it's priceless. Watch this.
Go back.
Watch this. He basically rolls his eyes with his whole head.
Very comfortable labeling them as activists, pro-Palestinian activists, when we have no idea who these people are. That's the point I'm trying to make. And in fact, nobody has connected a single Columbia student with any of the vile.
Is that not so good? Is that not so good? That should be a meme. That's like the perfect meme. Really?
That is good.
That's
good.
What you're going with?
I want to see if I can catch like the frame. Wait.
Labeling them as activists, pro-Palestinian activists, when we have no idea who these people are. That's the point I'm trying to make. And in fact...
Oh, it's so good.
That is good.
It's so good.
That is good. We should isolate, like zoom in, isolate it, and just have a GIF of like Robbie
Got to screen cap that one for the thumbnail.
Yeah. Okay. That's good.
Ahead.
Nobody has connected a single Columbia student with any of the vile statements of actual anti-Semitism that have been recorded and actually demonstrated.
Okay. So she just said nobody has any evidence that any of the statements made by Columbia students is like, anti-Semitic or vile or something, right? That's what she just said.
Right. Yeah.
Okay.
What's that all about?
So, the other day we kind of watched a compilation of some things, and I shortened it down even shorter to about 4 minutes and 30 seconds. And I want to just put it right here.
Okay.
So we can kind of see like statements that were made. And I cut out all the statements that were not made on the campus. I'm only having statements that were made on the campus right now. I don't know. Maybe Brianna will say that they're on the campus and they're all secretly not students. I don't know. Obviously, we don't know the information, but these are all statements from people that appear to be standing on Columbia campus. Okay.
Right. Okay. So this is evidence.
Yes.
Okay. Good. Look at this.
Let it be known that it was the Al-Aqsa flood that put the global intifada back on the table again.
Okay, so for those who don't know, what they just said was, let it be known that the militant wing of Hamas, their actions on October 7th put global intifada back on the stage. Okay.
Okay.
And
Yeah.
as you can see from the background, this is a student talking on Columbia campus
Yes. Yeah.
during
What
the
does that intifada mean? What is that all about?
that's
What's it?
the like the revolution, the Palestinian
Right.
revolution.
The violent revolution,
Yes,
correct?
yes,
Yeah.
yes, of course.
And it is the sacrificial spirit of
Oh, did you hear all those people? You
Oh,
hear all those
yeah.
people booing? Did you hear all those people booing? Because I didn't.
Booing. I heard them cheering. They
Oh,
were
you heard them cheering.
Yeah.
Okay.
Global Antifada.
Right. Okay.
and it is the sacrificial spirit of the Palestinian freedom fighters that will guide every struggle on every corner of the earth to victory.
So there's a again direct advocate for Hamas, calling them freedom fighters. There you
Right.
go.
So what are we here? What are we ready to give up? How far are we willing to go in losing all the trappings of a respectable life? These imperial spoils that we have been taught to value as individuals. As the great black communist James Boggs said, the revolution to be made in the United States will be the first revolution in history to require the masses to make material sacrifices rather than to acquire more material things. The lie of meritocracy, the lie of upward mobility, the lie of class society itself. All of these lies are built on the bones of the colonized masses. To fight tooth and nail against our enemy by any means necessary is to fight for the continuation of life itself. That the elite, educated youth in the imperial core have had enough and are growing teeth and are starting to show them again is the swan song of this bloody, illegitimate empire.
Okay, so that was a person on campus that was explicitly calling for other students to pick up the mantle of violence as they're praising Hamas's October 7th action.
Yeah, by any means necessary. That means violent means,
yes,
right?
yes. And they said they're showing their teeth to the evil capitalist imperial, imperial colonialist Americans. This is the swan song of America, okay? Which means it's the end of America. So, but then it continues. We even have a TikTok. It says, we tried to avoid sharing the worst of what's going on Columbia's campus tonight. Now we can no longer stay quiet. Here you see that there's people on Columbia campus calling someone who's Jewish an uncultured ass bitch. Go back to Europe. You have no culture. All you do is colonize.
You have a culture. You be creative. Okay, we get this. All you do is colonize. That's it. Who is here first? You're first.
Now we have Jewish students told to fuck off, told to stop killing children, told to go back to Poland as they walk from campus to their dorm rooms, again on Columbia campus.
Stop
killing children!
Public safety? We know.
So now we have, again, on Columbia campus, as you can clearly see, there are people speaking not English saying for Hamas to strike Tel Aviv. I don't know. Is this further evidence that of the violence?
That's violent. Yeah, for sure.
The anti-Semitic talking that Brianna was saying that no one had.
We got another win to announce. For folks who weren't here earlier this afternoon, we shared that the university has now lost this lawn, which is a critical part of their graduation commencement setup, which is costing them thousands of dollars.
So that was a person bragging about the fact that they can't do their graduation ceremony because they've basically taken over the space, which will be important later in the conversation in the video, because Brianna will claim that it doesn't really matter or impact the students that they've have this, Palestinian encampment on campus.
Oh yeah, good point. Yeah.
And now we have more footage on the Columbia University campus in the encampment. And we see there's people saying from the river to the sea, Palestine will be Arab. Okay. Not even free, will be Arab, meaning free of Jews.
Raise the banner of revolution.
Yep. And then here, of course, is an incident where the Palestinian encampment is trying to prevent Jewish students from existing near them in the space or being around them. Yeah.
Oh, this one's so cringe.
Can I get everyone to form a human chain right here, please? We have Zionists that have entered the camp. Mic check! Repeat after me. We have Zionists. Who have entered the camp. We are going to create a human chain. Where I am standing. So that they do not pass this point.
Excuse me, do you see what you guys are doing to us?
We are going
Do you
to
see how hostile
slowly
this is? And you're asking me not to record?
walk and take a step forward.
Yeah, I absolutely feel threatened right now.
So that we can start to push them out of the camp. One step forward.
What you all are doing.
Well, it's being mean, but I don't know if it's really physical violence.
Well, they're literally preventing students from accessing places on campus.
Yeah. It's awful.
Which again,
I guess it is kidnapping, right?
well, it's not kidding, but it's saying, because Brown makes this point later in the video that, the encampment isn't impacting students. And here we literally have a group of students that are saying, if you're a Zionist, you can't exist in this space that you as a student are helping pay for through your tuition.
That's awful. Basically stealing land.
There you go. They're land stealers.
Here is training ground. It is training ground. The level of organization, have you organized your food? Have you organized your little tents? How you literally occupied one space and then went to the next one. That is training ground for fighting. And that's what we need. We need fighters. There is no better school than this occupied space. I don't know what the hell they're teaching in those classrooms, but they ain't learning what y'all learning here.
So now we have a person who's basically cheering on what they're doing as they're basically training a generation of radical revolutionaries to fight against, quote, the power. And this is important because there's some people on the left who are more on the liberal left who are still operating under the false assumption that, oh, these kids, they're just protesting against people dying in Palestine. It's like, no. There's obviously something far more radicalizing here happening on this college campus. I mean, college campuses across the country.
Yeah, they're fighting against Western civilization.
Yes, right. Who they blame for everything.
Right.
Okay, so let's go back to Brianna now that we've clearly seen that she doesn't really know what she's talking about.
Pro-Palestinian activists when we have no idea who these people are. That's the point I'm trying to make. And in fact, nobody has connected a single Columbia student with any of the vile statements of actual anti-Semitism that have been recorded and actually demonstrated. And instead of focusing on what the Columbia students have been doing, which is to immediately condemn those statements and to focus on how many Jewish Columbia students are being negatively affected by this.
Do you remember when we watched that clip just now where the girl was talking about how based it was that Hamas did on October 7th? Do you remember hearing all the students booing immediately afterwards, saying that was a bad thing to do?
I heard cheers.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Up and arrested, yes. And the lead up to Passover, Jewish students who are overrepresented in these crowds. There is a
Did she just say Jewish students are overrepresented represented in the crowds? What's
She's
that
saying
all
Jewish
about?
students are overrepresented in the pro-Palestinian crowd.
Oh, okay.
emphasis from the White House in a way that we haven't seen since Nixon and the anti-Vietnam protests. A condemnation, what he described as blatantly anti-Semitic actions, none of which anybody can point to or connect to a Columbia student.
Well, there was video of, this was on the campus in the tented area of, I don't know if it was, I think it was last night, of the pro-Palestinian activists surrounding pro-Israel students who had come into their midst, forming a human chain. They're chanting, "We must form a human chain. We must eject them from this area." The pro-Israel students have a right to do counter-protesting as well. So if that was Columbia students, that's an action they're not allowed to take. That was on the campus. That was not on
Robbie,
Broadway
I don't know
or
what you're
wherever it
referring
was.
to, but pro-Israel
Well, it's all over the social
pro-Israel
media, so
students
you can
have
probably
been
find it.
protesting this entire time. In fact,
Do you like this? She's just like, I don't know what you're talking about, so let me change the subject. Like, it's so dishonest. You could just say, like, if she, first of all, I don't know how you could talk about this without being aware of this event. This event was all over Twitter, okay? I found all this stuff on Twitter fairly easily. I didn't have to do a deep dive to find any of this video for the compilation. Right. But even if you don't, even if she just doesn't know anything because she lives in an information bubble, okay, she could just say, she's going to be honest. She would just say, oh, well, I agree with you, Robbie. I think that behavior is wrong and should not be tolerated. Period. Right? But she doesn't. She immediately tries to jump topic. I don't know about that. But what about all this other stuff? What about all this other stuff, Robbie?
Maybe she agrees with that behavior.
Well, that's another $1 million question. Does she disagree with any of the more radical things that these people are saying? I don't know if she does.
That was not on
Robbie,
Broadway or wherever it was.
I don't know what you're referring to, but pro-Israel
it's all over the social media,
students
so you
have
can probably
been
find it.
protesting this entire time. In fact, pursuing and chasing pro-Palestine students around the lawn as they've been engaged in peaceful sit-ins and interfaith prayer, because so many of the pro-Palestinian activists are in fact Jewish themselves.
There you go. Listen, it's really the pro-Israeli Jewish students that are chasing the Jewish pro-Palestinian students across the lawn.
Yeah.
Okay. That's what's going on here.
I mean, they were calling them Zionists and stuff. How did didn't they start the protest because they were like, some Zionist entered our midst here?
Yeah. Yes.
So are I guess the other Jewish students that are with the protest are not Zionists? I mean, how do they make the distinction?
They're not Zionists.
They have like a questionnaire or something? Oh, you're Jewish. We have the Zionist questionnaire here.
Right. Like you can listen, you can be Jewish as long as you're not a Zionist.
I don't know.
That's the problem.
I'm going to be really clear here. There are Jewish students on both sides of this, overwhelmingly on the pro-Palestinian side on this, and pro-Zionist students, some of whom are Jewish and some of whom aren't. There's been some really important reporting over the last few days about how the overwhelming majority of people in an American Zionist movement are in fact Christian Zionists who, for their own religious reasons, they think that Christ is going to return and Jewish people have to be in Israel so they can be either converted to Christianity or smitten,
I mean, you just said we didn't know any of the the people shouting pro-Hamas on the streets. We don't know their identities. I don't know. Maybe if there are pro-Israel students engaging in bad activities, maybe those are false flag people as well. If we're just wildly speculating about
but it is
people out there.
Robbie's so cool, man.
I know. She just like, yeah, okay, sure, whatever.
Look, if we're just wildly speculating, maybe you should open your Twitter and actually watch the clip.
Yes. Yeah, exactly.
When people are in the lawn, I do think that there's a better presumption that they are in fact Columbia students. Interestingly,
including the person holding the sign that said, "You should be the next target of Hamas." I mean, that was on Columbia property. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, what's been really clear though is repeatedly.
Whoa. Okay. So again, Robbie brought up the incident that was all over the news that she cannot have not seen. Even MSNBC was talking about this. Joe Biden was like, part of his response was to this was that there were, pro-Israel protesters with an Israeli flags, and there was a person right next to them with a sign saying like, "This is Hamas's next target." And she just says, "Yeah, yeah,
Ooh,
whatever."
it's
Just
so
doesn't
bad.
doesn't give any sort of take on it. Just immediately changes the subject. This is what
Yeah,
she
yeah,
does. She
yeah,
just changes the
whatever.
subject.
Yeah, Robbie, whatever. But look, I'm trying to make a point here.
Yeah, exactly.
Repeatedly, the Columbia students condemn any statement that is outside of their goals and objectives. But what we're seeing in the United
That would be, listen, where's the clip of that? Am I in the information bubble? Show us, Brianna. Show the clip of all these Columbia students saying, listen, we're against, Hamas. We're clearly against, wiping Israel off. I know that you just saw a clip of people shouting, from the river to the sea, Palestine will be Arab, but we're against all that happened last night. Where's that clip? Show me the clip, Brianna. Please, don't just make it up.
That person would be kicked out of the community, out of the old lawn community there by the community guidelines.
Yes.
They can't talk back like that.
Yes.
United States of America was that the real power is that we have a Supreme Court that just held, that just decided to not take up a case in which they could have overturned a lower court decision, which held that the organizer of a protest is responsible for what any person at a protest does. And now we're seeing a media class, frankly, a very...
You see, okay, this is why it's so obnoxious to have a conversation. It would be so obnoxious to have a conversation with Brianna, because he brings up this point. Here's a student from Columbia who's doing the thing that you're saying is wrong. And she immediately says, that doesn't matter, Robbie. What matters is the Supreme Court.
Yeah.
Did you know Supreme Court did this thing? It's like, that's not what we're talking about. That's not what we're talking about. Why do you change the subject every time you actually have to address something that hurts your argument or hurts your position?
It's a masterclass in whataboutism.
Yes.
Pro-Israel biased media class, emphasizing what any rogue actor does to try to delegitimize a movement, and a move that in some states could prove to make it illegal, a jailable offense for the organizers of the protest, just because somebody else came up and participated. So I think in that environment, it is incumbent on us to be very serious and to really scrutinize who is doing what in these instances, especially when the mere provocation of people outside the gates can draw a president of the United States of America who's ostensibly a progressive, who is an anti-war person who's supposed to be representing the interests of these young people, to do what no president has done since Nixon in the Vietnam War protests, which is to come out and label all of these people as blatantly anti-Semitic in their protest.
Well, people on the right are very used to the mainstream media doing that to them, going to Trump rallies or whatever it is, finding the one person with a QAnon sign or a Nazi sign or something and saying, look at how extreme.
So do you think it's right then that they do that?
No, absolutely not.
Okay, then
I'm not broadly characterizing the protest that way. As I said, I think most of the bad activity going on is from outside interloper type people.
But the problem is that Biden is, the mainstream news media is, Jake Tapper is, and that's the problem, because there's a real asymmetry here where there's more focus on what college students on campus are saying.
This is also not true. Like the mainstream media has been pointing out like, there's a lot of anti-Semitism here, but they've also been like trying to be very like, both sides about it. This idea, and I heard Brown say this. I think Crystal Ball saying this, and I don't know what they're referring to. They keep saying that the mainstream media has been like so pro-Israel. That's not been true for months at all. I have no clue what they're referring to here.
Instead of the fact that they're protesting that multiple mass graves were discovered over the weekend, filled with Palestinian bodies, that a Palestinian child had to be recovered from her mother's womb as she died.
What about the people dying, Adam? Okay, what about the people dying? I know that we're having a conversation about what behavior should be allowed on college campuses, but what about the people dying somewhere hundreds, if not thousands of miles away? Okay,
right,
on another part of the globe. What about those people?
I don't think there's as much ideological diversity among these pro-Palestinian protesters as Brianna would like to think. I really don't. I think it's very, very simple. It's like they see Israel as oppressing Palestine and they see Jewish people as oppressors by extension. It's just straight racism.
Died as a consequence of an Israeli airstrike. Multiple senior officials in the Israeli government and the American government has said that Gaza should be a parking lot, that it should be obliterated, that there are no innocent civilians. And nobody in our government is censored for those kinds of statements, even though our Muslim representatives are censored for simply saying that from the river to the sea, Palestine should be free from oppression.
Right.
That's
Wait. Weren't those statements
free from what? Free from
like
oppression or oppressors?
Do you like that she had to add that thing, free from oppression? That's not part of this thing. It's not.
No.
It's not from the river to the sea. Palestinians shall be free from oppression. That was never part. That's not part of the statement. She just added that
Yeah.
completely.
Yeah, she's trying to do a defund the police here.
Right. But I mean, I don't know if what the Gaza parking lot thing. What are there Israeli protesters on Columbia campus that are advocating that all of Gaza should be wiped out? I haven't heard those clips. I don't think that people should be advocating for that either.
Yeah.
It seems like a total like BS deflection here.
People are chanting Gaza should be a parking lot. Where's that clip?
I haven't seen that one.
Right.
that's the asymmetry we're talking about here.
People are getting upset about.
And police are rounding up
Demonstrations in
and
favor-
arresting students, including disproportionately overrepresented Jewish students in these protests.
Well, I don't want an increased police presence or mass arresting of students, especially students just engaged in protest have the right to do that. I mean, they do. They have to. What they can't. I mean, they should face the consequences of just like not going to their classes, right? I mean, I don't think the university should cancel classes for everyone
Well, they have.
to accommodate political.
It's so bizarre. That's a really fascinating point. So the university has decided, even though there is no, you mentioned the tents are obstructing people from going to class. I don't know if you've been to Columbia or spent time at Columbia. The tents.
I've been to Columbia.
The giant lawn on which these tents are placed are not obstructing anybody from going to class.
Right, but I
and
don't
the
think you
response
have
from
the right to
students-
permanently occupy or semi-permanently occupy
But that's
a
not.
public
You made
space.
an argument that whether or not you think that people have a right to do that, your argument seemed to be a practical one, that it is impeding the function of the university, which is not the case. And students, frankly, are curious as to why it is that they're being told now we are going to do remote learning when many people who were asking for those kind of provisions during COVID because of their sense of safety in those instances.
Well, I thought that was silly too.
Well, that's fine, but now they're doing it. And so it does speak to the university's priorities, whatever you think about COVID and Israel respectively. It does speak to the university's priorities that they're willing to suspend classes and go to remote learning because of the safety concerns of some Jewish students. Again, not all Jewish students. We should not conflate Zionist students with Jewish students. But we're on.
I agree. We should protect Jewish students, but if you're a Zionist or you disagree with the protesters, you shouldn't be safe on campus, right? Who cares?
It does seem like she's saying that, which is just weird. And also the fact that it's just a small, tiny minority of people who are afraid for their lives. Like, who cares, right?
Yeah. Can you imagine if it was like
Yeah.
people were like violently, accosting trans people on campus?
Oh,
and
yeah.
You're like, well, there's just a very small amount of trans people on campus, Brianna. So who cares, right? Doesn't matter.
It's ridiculous. You'd never say that.
Right.
The bad behavior is the people who are accosting anyone, no matter how small the minority group is. This is like progressivism 101, Brianna. Come on.
Right. This is supposed to be a college campus. I think because there was a lot of protesting about the Vietnam War by colleges, which made sense because kids didn't want to go to war. This is like idea of like college campuses are supposed to be places where people can protest about whatever dumb shit they want that has nothing to do with getting an education, nothing to do with a job, and is basically just becoming, unfortunately, these factories to try to crap out radical, revolutionary leftist types. When that's not really what college is supposed to be for and shouldn't be what college is for.
Yeah. I used to have a bunch of friends at UC Santa Cruz. So I used to hang out on the UC Santa Cruz campus a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And it is wildly spread out. They're like these long, long paths through the woods to get to each of the buildings.
Wow.
And they structured it that way because they thought, okay, when the revolutionary energy gets going over here, by the time they walk all the way up this hill to the library,
They'll be tired.
all the revolutionary energy will be gone.
That's hilarious.
Isn't it? Isn't it totally hilarious?
So funny.
I was like, there you go. That's thinking ahead. Look, this is
There
the
you go.
kind of this is a kind of campus this thing could never get started on.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
The colleges should be trying to educate students to be, healthy, productive citizens healthy, productive American citizens that want to produce a better America, not
Right.
revolutionaries who hate America and want to tear everything down.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, they would argue that would be a better America.
Yeah, because
And
they're
just
psychotic.
I know. They shouldn't be encouraging psychopathic behavior in our society. I completely agree.
Willing to do it for the safety and health concerns of the public at large.
I think that's bad. I think the campus needs to be safe for people to attend in person. I think it largely is safe, and it's not safe. They have to deal with that. I would have classes regularly. I would schedule some exams for this time period, and then people can either go back to their classes or they can suffer the consequence for not doing that, and you don't have to involve the police.
Yeah, it is notable, though, that the Columbia's president did call in the police, and over 100 students were arrested. That is a fact. So when we're talking about, are we complaining about something somebody said somewhere? Are we talking about a president of a university calling on the power of their municipality to arrest and jail students who are expressing themselves politically? We're talking about the president of the United States.
They formed a human chain to eject.
Using his pulpit to condemn student protesters. We're talking about the Supreme Court declining to rectify state law that would make someone who planned a protest liable for anything any protester at that event did. This is authoritarianism.
Student protesters.
It's authoritarianism that it's being backed by people who describe themselves as Democrats and liberals.
Student protesters.
It's authoritarian that you want to have a college be a college where people go to class. I don't know, and not advocate for violence and genocide. That's authoritarian, apparently.
Oh,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay. Interesting.
I was just, Robbie's eye rolls are epic. He's like, oh, the expression on his face is like, oh no, here she goes again. Here it goes. Here it comes.
Mm-hmm.
She can't be stopped. The rising producers have to know what they're doing.
Of course.
This is like such a winning combination here. This is like the odd couple right here.
Mm-hmm.
These two. And they both seem completely sincere, but they're just 1,000% at odds with one another.
Mm-hmm.
On Columbia, on the campus, formed a human chain to eject pro-Israel students from their midst. Those students have a right to be there as well. That is aggression, and that you can't do that, and that invites a police response.
More Rising right after this.
Oh, it's so good.
He will
It's so
never,
good.
she will never in her entire life acknowledge any point whatsoever, any middle ground, say, oh, you're right. Like someone on my side did something bad. She'll just never acknowledge it. It's wild.
Brianna Joy Gray is a revolutionary. She was involved with the Bernie Sanders campaign. I think that's how she rose to prominence. And I mean, the Bernie people were into Bernie Sanders because it did have a lot of that revolutionary energy.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
There you go. And actually, apparently, breaking news. Columbia has said that they have modified its schedule so that the remainder of the spring semester until the end of the school year will be hybrid between allowing remote learning because of the safety issues from all these protests.
What a bunch of cucks. Seriously.
Yes. I mean, you got to go in there. You got to arrest all these people, expel them all from school. You can't fuck out to this shit. It's wild.
Hi, you just listened to a Sitch and Adam recorded video. That's right, we're still doing recorded videos. And of course, we're still doing our live streams. Our Sunday live stream begins at 1 p.m. Pacific, 4 p.m. Eastern. And our daily live streams start at 11 p.m. Pacific, 2 p.m. Eastern. Come check it out. You're gonna love it. Subscribe to this channel right here to watch the live show or watch more of our awesome deep dive videos.